Okay, that happened again. I got the redo of the damn countdown.
Oh no! Not again.
Yeah. Anyway, folks, welcome back to Orange Hat. We got Tolkien Sunday episode 4, the Appendices. So we're going over all the stuff that we liked about the Lord of the Rings, some behind the scenes, some things that we all may know or not know. Just having a fun discussion. And if it takes a few hours, it takes a few hours. But also, if you want to support my channel and these folks, support them by subbing to them, watching their stuff, getting their watch time up. That's basically what I need. I need 1,000 watch hours still. It's been fluctuating up and down.
Homie, I've been trying. I've been watching some videos.
Thank you very much. I do appreciate it, and I have seen the difference. And thank you. It has been working. I also have a interview tomorrow night on Swagmaster's channel. I will be promoting that as I get a link to it. So when I get a link to it, I will promote it tomorrow. Tuesday is Jason Bourne Tuesdays. Wednesday, I will get some content out. And Thursday, well, we all know that is a day of giving thanks.
Gobble, gobble, gobble.
Yes, it is the Gobbler Day.
Gobble.
And there was that hilarious thing on
that sounds
Instagram,
almost like something dirty.
Yeah, I know, right? Anyway, but yes, we are, before we get started, let's say hello to the chat. We got Neozoic.
It's already making inappropriate content.
We got Neozoic.
You say we, but it's mostly just you.
We got Vanya, Neozoic. Thank you for coming in. Price is Right. Thank you for coming in. I've been doing my part watching your content. Thank you so much, dude. It really helps. You guys are actually making a difference.
We're trying. We're trying.
And
Price, you are.
And Price, I get that. And Price, I get that reference. I'm doing my part too.
Thanksgiving planes and other LMAO, yeah. But
I've never seen that movie all the way through.
What, Planes, Trains, and Automobiles?
Yeah. Great film.
Super
funny.
I haven't seen that movie in years. Like when I say years, I mean years.
It's a great movie.
But anyway, we are talking about the Appendices tonight.
Heck yeah.
Yes.
Oh, okay. She said, heck yeah. I'm like, wait, was she yelling at somebody?
No. She might have been.
No, I was just really excited because I don't think that because we were doing the extended editions and because things take so long, I appreciate the hey, let's take an extra stream just to talk about everything and themes overall and stuff that we missed. Like, it's so dense that we needed an extra week. You know what I mean?
Because, I mean, I only got one thing on my notes for the Appendices, but I also was watching some of the Appendices earlier from the movies, specifically the Weta Workshop. And folks, if it wasn't for Weta Workshop, this movie would never have been done, or these movies would never have been done to the quality that they were on. And
by the way, you're welcome.
Though, yes, specifically,
just teasing. So
I do want to give a thank you to the head of Weta Workshop at the time, Richard Taylor. That man had to pull together so many different people, from drawing to sculpting. They even brought in 2 people who were in New Zealand that had metalwork stuff. Hey, Seth Assassin Trailer, thank you for stopping in. And make sure that you smash the like, folks. It really also helps too.
What was the budget for these movies? Did you? I don't know. Because
I can look it up.
Are you? I know that people are spending more on movies now, but I mean, inflation's obviously can be factored in. But even with the money that they had, the CGI still holds up 20 years later. The practical effects were great. People compare the Lord of the Rings trilogy to the new Amazon movie series, and they say that the quality, I haven't seen the Amazon series, so I cannot comment on other than what they have published and what I have seen. But from what I hear, the quality of even the costuming was great because in Lord of the Rings, they cared about those details. They had somebody doing the chainmail by hand. They had people, doing those,
Ambassador, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, go ahead.
The budget. The budget. The budget was $281 million, which would be equivalent to $494 million in 2022.
Okay.
So that was basically for. Was that for all three movies or just?
Yeah, the three movies were shot simultaneously in Jackson's Land, New Zealand, from October 11th, 1999.
So cumulative, all three cost $400 million in today's numbers.
Mm-hmm.
Over almost 500 million. It was 494.
But across three movies, wow! Because nowadays they would spend, $400 million per movie. You know what I mean?
Yeah. It was one of the biggest and most ambitious film projects ever undertaken, with a budget of $281 million from 2002 or 2000 to 2003.
Oh shit, that's right. He was
more than made back its money. I would
dare. Yeah. Oh, for sure. Yeah. Well, they've been trying to copy Lord of the Rings as far as depth and how it influenced movie making, and just like it's kind of like trying to copy Star Wars. It influenced movies in the future. It influenced a lot of different things, so it's kind of hard to top that.
So Neozoic is asking how would I compare would we compare John Rhys Davies Gimli to other such roles as Thala from Indiana Jones, Living Daylights, and Aquaman, and others. John Rhys Davies is Gimli. I mean, he is a 6'4" tall dwarf, and I love him.
To be fair, he kind of owns every single thing that he's in, because even when he's in something silly like when Disney did the Princess Diaries movie, he was in the second one, and
the second one.
He just is like, he owns whatever role that he's in. But yeah, he definitely owns the Gimli role. I don't think anybody could replace him. But I could say the same thing as for Viggo as Aragorn, and for Orlando as Legolas. You know what I mean?
Oh my god, I loved him in Princess Diaries. He's like, "Who do you think you were named after?" Great Uncle Nicholas, of course. No, Niccolo Machiavelli. It's like,
yeah. And he just owns it. Like, you know what I mean? It might be a silly role in some Disney princess live action film, but he takes his job seriously.
And
you know what I mean?
Very good job at it.
Exactly. And I think that's kind of what sets this cast apart, just in general, is they took these books seriously, they took the script seriously, they took Tolkien seriously, and even to this day, like when I go to conventions and there are, all of the like there was one a couple years ago I went to where all of the guys who played the hobbits were there, and they were talking about books, things that weren't in the movies. Like, they're nerds about this shit too, you know what I mean? So like, that's what I appreciate about just like the whole thing of, Peter Jackson made it very clear that they wanted to be true to the books. And I don't know, I feel like all of the actors who were in it really appreciated the books as well. So that's why I really love these projects.
I mean, watching the appendices, The Lord of the Rings is amazed or how they could split up the film process where they shot in several countries at once, but put it all together very well done. Yeah. I mean, the Lord of the Rings was mostly done in, actually, I think it was solely done in New Zealand. Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, just different parts of the country.
Yeah, exactly. You know, it was Lord of the Rings is one of those film projects that you really, and we've discussed this over the last few weeks. This is a modern epic. This is the definition of a modern epic. Whether it's the theatrical or the extended cuts, this is an epic story. And you know, the interesting thing, I touched upon this when I did my reviews of Lord of the Rings about a year and a half ago. Particularly Fellowship of the Ring came out at a time when the world, but more so I think the United States, needed a bit of escapism. Because if you think about this, Fellowship came out in December of 2001. What happened 3 months prior?
Yeah. 9/11.
Yeah. That was part and parcel due to the success of Fellowship, and not to mention all three movies, was due to the fact that people were just stressed out beyond belief, and they needed a simple story, so to speak, of good versus evil. And while there is a lot of danger and a lot of hazard throughout these movies, ultimately we know the good guys win.
Mm-hmm.
The American consciousness was ready for something as seemingly simplistic as a fight between good and evil, black and white.
Oh yeah,
clear cut.
Definitely.
And you know, I don't think Tolkien. You know, obviously Tolkien. We've discussed this. He did not go for allegory or metaphor or anything like that. He, particularly in his writing. But
it wasn't intended.
It wasn't intended. But I think he would, and I think he would appreciate, if he had been alive, the reception that these films received, even though they, you know, as we said, he would not have approved of all the changes that were done. But the thing is, no, we know for a fact he wouldn't have approved.
No.
Tolkien was and I think it's justified, a perfectionist.
Oh yes, very much.
He knew how he wanted his. He knew how he wanted his universe. He knew how he wanted his world to be crafted, and how he would want it to be represented on the big screen or the small screen.
Even though I love the movies and what they do, I feel like if you wanted to get Lord of the Rings perfect, a TV series would be better. Obviously, Amazon can't do that properly. But if they wanted to get, because you could just have like an episode per chapter and just go. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And dive into all of the little nitty grittiness of it. But at the time that it was made, TV wasn't really the standard for
quality.
You know,
there was no.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. There was no TV studio that exists. That existed at the time that could have undertaken this type of budget to do a show of this scale. It just did not exist.
Correct. It didn't exist at the time.
It doesn't necessarily exist. And I don't think it does now. They
could do it because, I mean, we've seen Game of Thrones be successful, and Game of Thrones basically was trying to be Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, and they failed.
Yeah,
they were too interested in nudity and incest and shit.
Right. Well, like, and we can talk about the merits of Lord of the Rings versus the failures of Game of Thrones. But if you wanted to take the same style of deep dive into some books, HBO, I mean, proved that you can do the money and the time and the effort that it's taken. there are certain things now that like the music for Lord of the Rings and that in the Peter Jackson films, like you can never undo that little da 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 da, for the hobbits, or da 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 da, when you're doing the Fellowship. There's certain things now that are just so ingrained that if you tried to redo it, I don't think the fans would like it. You know what I mean? Now it's been done so well.
Fans wouldn't like it.
That unless it were like perfect and you got everything to a T, you'd have to at least wait until after Sir Ian McKellen dies to redo it, because nobody will accept anybody else's Gandalf at this point.
Nobody will accept anybody else's Saruman.
No one will accept anybody else's Gandalf.
You know what I mean? But you know what I mean? Like, we would have to wait a good 10, 15 years or something in order to be able to redo Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
Exactly the way that the books had it. You know what I mean? It would just take too much.
One of the things that and Neozoic, I will get to your question in a little bit after I give my piece on this. One of the things that a lot of studios and stuff, specifically Amazon, who failed with their Rings of Power thing, they don't understand how passionate a fan base is. You have Star Wars. They number in the hundreds of millions. You have Terminator. They span in the maybe tens to hundreds of millions. You have Star Wars, Star Trek, and all those other popular movie franchises. Then you have Tolkien.
Yeah.
Where all those other ones are like rabbits. Tolkien's fan base is like
the daddy.
Calagon the Black.
Yes.
The greatest dragon of them all, compared to all these rabbits under their foot. His fan base numbers over 1 billion on Earth.
It's because a lot of his fan base comes from the book readers. There are still tons of purists. I would consider a lot of movie lovers Tolkien purists. Mm-hmm. And then there are still only book people who I would consider Tolkien purists. So that's why when Amazon came out and they're like, we're going to piss off Tolkien purists, don't watch this if you're a Tolkien purist. And all the Tolkien purists were like, oh, okay, cool. Thanks for telling me and letting me know in advance. And we didn't watch it. And then their shit failed. They were like, oh, no, wait. We pissed off the wrong fan base.
And they were dumb enough to even say, okay, we're going to model it a success even if we fail. But anyway, moving on.
Sorry to get off topic, but
it's okay. Asks, how would we compare Ian McKellen's Gandalf to his other roles? He was very good as Gandalf. He was very good as Magneto, and the other ones I'm not really sure. I mean,
Richard III, he did amazing.
Gods and Monsters as James Whale. He was
I didn't see Gods and Monsters. I didn't see Gods and Monsters, but I would, in my opinion, he treats every single role that he's in like he needs to be perfect in it, even if it's silly.
He's a theater actor, that's why.
Correct. And he treats everything like it's Shakespeare, even if it's silly and absurd. So it's hard to rate him Neozoic as far as like X-Men versus Lord of the Rings because his acting in it is always 10 out of 10. Sometimes the writing is not as great, but he still treats the writing like it's 10 out of 10.
And you make a good point here, Sith Assassin Trailer. Yes, when adapting Lord of the Rings, you cannot adapt it faithfully. There's no way to adapt it 100% faithfully from one medium or from book to screen. And that is something that even in his life, Tolkien understood, because he sold the movie rights of his film or of his works for $1. Because he's like, you are all going to inevitably try to do this. You're going to fail, but you're inevitably going to try. So you know what? Have at it. However, you won't get an approval from me because it can't be done. And he's right. But however, he may not approve of Peter Jackson's Lord of the Rings. However, I do think in some way or another, he will appreciate that the people involved had the passion and the respect for his work to such a degree that even they understood there's no way to do it properly. I think that if he was alive to see these movies, which he would have been over 100 when they came out. I can't remember what year he was born.
Yeah. He would have been.
Yeah, I know. I would agree with you. If he had the chance to see the dedication.
I know.
Yeah.
Yeah. I do know that Christopher Tolkien.
Here's the thing. Tolkien may not have approved. Yeah. Go ahead. Yeah. Go ahead, Orange.
I do know that Christopher Tolkien saw these movies. And he's like, my father wouldn't approve. But I do believe I cannot speak for the dead, but I can't remember what he said in response to these movies coming out. I do believe he said, this was the best adaptation that I have seen. However, my father would never have approved of them. And Christopher Tolkien, for those of you who don't know, he stepped up for his father to finish the Unfinished Tales of Numenor. He stepped up to edit the Silmarillion. His son did a lot for his father's published works to get them out. And going back for 1 second to talk about something that Ambassador brought up, how Tolkien was a perfectionist. When he started writing The Hobbit, if he screwed up once, he would get rid of every single page he had written
and start from scratch.
Scratch. He would do the same with Lord of the Rings. If he didn't like where it was going,
or if he got stuck,
or if he got stuck, scrap it all, start from scratch again. That is the level of quality that you are dealing with when you are dealing with a franchise, a series, a mythology like J.R.R. Tolkien's Lord of the Rings, which, yes, I still have this book down here.
Which is great that we have the Silmarillion and everything, too, because if he got stuck and then just stopped and erased everything and threw everything away, that means whatever that he kept that his son Christopher had to put together, he thought it was worth keeping and is canon. You know what I mean? If he's so willing to, if his style was, all right, screw it, I'm starting from scratch, throwing everything away, everything's going in the trash. Since it was kept and Christopher was able to put it together and edit it together to be a cohesive story for the Silmarillion and the Book of Lost Tales and all of the other things that were published posthumously, it means that it's still canon. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And another thing, speaking of Aragorn here, Viggo Mortensen, when he came onto the project, that man had such a passion. Now, what a workshop created hero swords, prop swords, and all sorts of different tang and quality and wobble and whatnot. And Viggo's like, I'm going to be carrying, or I want to create an authenticity. So he carried his hero sword the entire time. He did not want to use the other swords until he actually had to. And then there's also Sean Bean, who, God, I still love that meme that we were talking about earlier. It's like, he's played by Sean Bean, you stupid blonde. We got to get out, or we got to stop. But yeah.
He's going to die.
Yeah. But when it came to Sean Bean, he also speaks to a level of passion. It's like, when you receive a sword for your character, it's a very personal thing. And so, yeah, when I had that sword, I was a person who wanted to create a sense of authenticity too. He's also afraid of heights, folks. This was such a boon, or not a boon, but a bane on the production. Because there was a shot up in the mountains. And, well, Sean Bean is afraid of heights. He's like, I will fucking hike my ass up this mountain. I will not fly in a helicopter. You got to give him credit, folks. You got to give. I mean, Sean Bean dies in almost everything he's in, but you got to give him credit.
Except for National Treasure, the first one.
And and other movies too. I believe Silent Hill.
Yeah.
I mean, Sean. A lot of people do not give that man the proper respect he deserves because of him basically being a joke because he dies in almost everything he's in. But honestly, he does such a great job as an actor. Yes, he's been typecast as a villain for so many years. I mean, the first time I ever saw Sean Bean, it was GoldenEye 007 where he played 006, but also a traitor, or who became a traitor. But oh my God, man, he played it so well. And then coming up as Aragorn, he plays that role so well. Playing National Treasure, he plays it so well. But he also plays
Boromir.
He played as Boromir. And he just had everyone in this movie, both in front of the camera and behind the camera, had such a passion, and it truly is underappreciated. Price is Right review, J.R.R. Tolkien, unless I am wrong, mentioned that making his world into a film was considered impossible. Yes, him seeing Lord of the Rings may have proven him. No, it wouldn't have proven him wrong. It would have proven him right. As he said, there's no way you're adapting my works.
That's why he sold it for what it was. Yeah,
for $1. He sold the rights to the movies, or the movie rights, for $1 because he knew that they would never gain his full approval. I was working when those movies came out. Harry Potter, Lord of the Rings were massive audiences, along with Star Wars episodes 2 and 3, and nothing has come close since. Honestly, the late 90s, early 2000s it was the blockbuster era. And they haven't been able to, they have not been able to copy that. I was looking for the right word, duplicate that. Yes, you have the MCU. We've discussed the MCU. Those are fucking popcorn flicks compared to movies like Lord of the Rings, Star Wars, and whatnot. They're popcorn flicks where you have movies where you have people with such a dedicated level of passion for these projects that you aren't gonna get in any other movie. I mean, with one exception, Top Gun Maverick, because holy crap, did Tom Cruise himself, small segue, is also an incredibly passionate actor. I mean, I don't agree with other things outside of his acting, but the man had.
He's like the last movie actor who's just about, hey, let's produce something good for the fans, and it shows on the screen.
This is a good question.
I would make an argument for Ghostbusters Afterlife, but that's a different story.
Yes. Well, honestly, it fits in with passionate movie making. I mean, Jason Reitman did perfect by his old man and Rip.
Neozoic coming in with the good questions.
Do you think that the reason why Lord of the Rings success while Game of Thrones failed is because of the former follows the simple black and white good versus evil, while the latter falls on all gray, no clear good and evil? Yes, in a way, and also because you had a very learned person writing Lord of the Rings. You had a very passionate person who was very worldly and also he loved the world he was in. He didn't want, or one of the things that Tolkien himself said, the worst invention is the internal combustion engine.
Yeah.
He was very much a naturalist, folks. And when he writes about the last march of the Ents, when we see the Ents going after Isengard, when we see the trees fighting back against the Uruks, that is the spirit of Tolkien, essentially, because Tolkien himself always wanted the world to go back to its natural claim. And unfortunately, well, we haven't been doing a very good job at it. How do you do, Happy Dinosaur or Happy Dino?
Can I give just to go off of Neozoic's thing, as somebody who appreciated the books of Game of Thrones, can I give an alternate perspective? So, Game of Thrones, the TV show, stopped being good when it deviated from the source material. The source material was pretty good because it wanted to introduce magic with history that we have seen before. Game of Thrones, or A Song of Ice and Fire, rather, the book series was based off of a magical perspective of the War of the Roses. So the Yorks versus the Lancasters, it was basically when the Tudors took over for the Plantagenets. And it was this war in England that spanned a good 300 years. And the Starks were supposed to be based off of the Yorks, and the Lannisters were supposed to be based off of the Lancasters. I'm at full support of history style things that add a little bit of magic. I don't know. I'm okay with that. When I had a problem was when J.R.R. Tolkien or J.R.R. Martin, or sorry, George R.R. Martin.
R.R. Martin. Yeah.
See, he's already trying to fucking copy J.R.R. Tolkien.
I know, right?
When George Martin tried to be subversive and say, oh, I'm the alternative to Tolkien, and tried to put himself in a better light than Tolkien. The guy can't even finish the last 2 books of his book series, A Song of Ice and Fire, and yet he wants to start like ragging on Tolkien and how, whatever. When basically his best character in Game of Thrones, Jon Snow, is a carbon copy of Aragorn.
Yep.
Like, he's basically the same exact character if you break it down. I can break it down, but we're not talking about Game of Thrones.
Aside from the whole bastard angle.
Aside from okay, here, I'll break it down for you.
Yeah.
All right. So, Jon Snow is a long-lost heir to a broken line of kings, right? Aragorn is what? A long-lost heir to a broken line of kings. Jon Snow is given extra life due to some ancient magic that brings him back to life after he dies in season 5. Aragorn has extra life because he has a Númenórean blood, which is, oh, you guessed it, an ancient magic that, gives him extra life. Like, I could keep going, but Jon Snow is basically a carbon copy of Aragorn. And so, George Martin wants to make fun of Tolkien, but all of his shit wouldn't even exist if Tolkien didn't write Lord of the Rings. That's coming from somebody who really enjoyed A Song of Ice and Fire, because before he started pointing fingers, his source material and his material was actually pretty good. And the show started being shitty when it deviated from the source material. Now George Martin just cares about making new content for TV shows that makes him more money than actually finishing the story that he started. So as far as like world building goes too, obviously it goes to Tolkien.
Yeah.
Here's the other thing too. As far as I know, George.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
No. You go ahead.
Orange. All I was going to say is the thing is, unlike Tolkien, as far as I know, George Martin doesn't have any kids that'll come behind him and finish his work for him.
No, because that man is so fucking fat, I don't even think he can get out of his chair.
Not to mention, I think he's so fat, even his. Not to mention the man's so fat, even his sperm are fat and lazy.
Probably, but anyway, getting off.
That's actually a pretty good bird.
It was.
Sorry.
Assassin trailer. Movie studios now think they could just slap a name on something and the fan base will automatically like it. They've been proven wrong 3 times now. That's the thing. Marvel, Star Wars, and Tolkien's works. I mean, you think that you could just slap your logos on it and I mean, back in the 2000s when George Lucas was still doing his Star Wars stuff, a person could take a piss in a jug, slap the Star Wars logo on it, and say it's Bantha piss, and people would buy that by the gallon. Because that's basically how much of a draw it was back then.
Yeah.
Nowadays, if you were to take a piss in a jar, slap the Star Wars logo on it, the only people you would get are the Disney fans, who are and I'm talking about the ones who were, now, don't get me wrong, folks. I'm talking about the ones who were introduced to Star Wars through Disney, not the ones who have been in it since pretty much close to the beginning or at the beginning. Because now, or many of them, yes, there are some from the beginning who still like the Disney stuff because at least we're still getting Star Wars. But are you? Right. But anyway, getting back to it, fans are just so hungry for consumption that they're willing to accept a lower quality in order to get that fix.
It's not just that. If we've been conditioned to accept lower quality, you know,
I haven't.
No, I know, but like a lot of people haven't, but like because so like the whole term blockbuster, it used to be like 1 or 2 movies a year were blockbusters because they would be the movies that people would line around the block to get tickets to. Now, every single movie that comes out is so expensive, it needs to be a blockbuster, but also movie consumption has changed over the years because people can't afford to go to the movie 5 or 6 times a year for that. You know, maybe they go 1 or 2 times a year, or they wait for it to come out on streaming. You know, since streaming started and like maybe COVID had something to do with it too, people aren't consuming movies or television the same way that they used to. So when every single movie that comes out in theaters needs to make $1 billion in order to be successful, you're basically putting a strain on movie consumers, and people aren't willing to consume the same or spend money to consume the same trash that they've been consuming for the past 10 years. You know what I mean? Like, that's why we have the Marvels failing. That's why we have the new Hunger Games movie failing. That's why basically everything since Barbenheimer has flopped, you know?
Yeah, and that's the thing, folks. Yes, movies have been failing because Hollywood just wants that, they just want to get, or they're
consume.
or quantity over quality. And even Netflix has actually admitted that is the wrong way to go. They need to focus on quality instead of quantity.
And that's why the Lord of the Rings movies have lasted so long and why they're still amazing, is because the quality that was put into it was so high that 20 years later, people are like, you know what? This is still great. Like, even though they changed stuff, this is still, they cared and they put some effort into it.
Yeah. Besides one other reason, such as Game of Thrones, Song of Ice and Fire had no conclusion, while Lord of the Rings Legendarium has a conclusion. Too many characters and plots focus too much on being deconstruction.
Yes.
Yep. I am behind in the chat, folks. I am sorry. I am moving through it. And yes, I see
here's
you.
The other thing too.
Happy Dino.
Here's the thing. We're all old enough. I think maybe I'm a little bit older than you and Kate, Orange. Movies back in the 80s and the 90s, and this is building towards the topic of the evening. Movies of the 80s were not all a blockbuster. Some of them were just very small films, but they would go on to be successful, or they would eventually grow a cult following. As the years have progressed, obviously the movie industry has changed. We all know this. We have seen it. We have witnessed it with our own eyes. Now, granted, New Line Cinema no longer exists as an independent studio. It's now part of Warner Brothers. It was bought out.
Yeah.
New Line at the time knew that they had a prospective blockbuster franchise on their hands, and they leveraged just about everything they had because they were a relatively new studio. They were a relatively young studio when they took on this project. But they didn't give Jackson necessarily a blank check, but they told him, you go out and get the best people that you can afford, that we can afford for you to get. And look who they got.
Mm-hmm.
You got Alan Lee. You got John Howe. Those two there were a massive win for that production. Granted, it was hard as hell, especially to get. Yeah. When you're seeking out near recluses for your movie production, that shows the dedication that you have. Look at movie production now. They yank anybody off the street that's directed an episode of some piece of crap that was on the CW and give them a multi-million-dollar budget. And what do you get? You get crap.
Yep. Price is Right review.
And that is unfortunate.
Yeah.
So
I have to respectfully disagree with Orange on a part that I stand by that. God of War was a series of, or in the ranks of Lord of the Rings, though it was a game, but the story was well done. I will admit that some of the story is well done. However, it will not rank with Lord of the Rings on the basis that it had to go back into prequel stuff with other games to add to or to fill in lore instead of focusing on 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And because you have the first 3 games, which was the Greek pantheon. Well, then you had to they changed their own freaking lore and made it so he had a brother, and also to add to other things because they could, or they like, what the hell is this writing in number 2? They're like, wait, he had contact with Atlas before? When was that? Nobody knew, so they had to go and create another game for that. So then they screwed up in the game making, and then they had to fill in those holes with other games just to make sure that they had the right stuff. However, I do appreciate what they did with the story of Kratos. I mean, I am a Greek myth fan. I do like the God of War games. I mean, who doesn't? I mean, you get or for men or for guys, you get a lot of nudity in there in the Greek pantheon.
Yeah, that's true.
So it's kind of hard.
They calmed down in the last 2. Yeah, for God of War and for Ragnarok, they chilled out on them.
They didn't put any in there because they realized, that we can't go there because people will complain. Yeah, and
I was just surprised because when you go from playing God of War 2, God of War 3, and then God of War technically 4, you're like, wait, what?
Don't get me wrong, I do like the I really do.
Sure, I like the new God of War, but I find I'm gonna disagree with Price is Right here on comparing God of War to Lord of the Rings. No, nobody else other than Tolkien created their own lore, and not only that, they created their own for each individual race in Middle Earth, he created their own history, their own language, their own alphabet. Nobody else has done that.
Yeah. And thank you to Price is Right review. For me, for the $5 super chat, thank you so much, sir. For me, God of War was a series, though it's a game, but it also is a very interactive film when you think about it with a huge following like Star Wars and Lord of the Rings. I mean,
I'll give you that. You have
the side quests. You have all the other stuff too. I mean, it is very immersive. The God of War series is very immersive, and I will
super immersive.
Indeed, agree with you on that. I just do not think it will ever reach quality or the same quality as Tolkien. Tolkien is a world unto his own.
He created his own lore.
Yes.
He didn't have to pull off lore from Norse. And don't get me wrong, I love the whole series of God of War. I'm right there with you. It's super fun. It's super interactive. It's great. I love it. But it pulls off of different lores. Tolkien strived to create his own lore.
All right. And there used to be a bunch of odd previews. And or I'd see and say, oh, that looks good. And I usually go to see it. Since 2019, I've seen 5. Yeah, it's same here. Same here, Seth Trailer. You're saying, Ambassador?
Well, and here's the other thing, kind of digging into, the production of these movies. Jackson was literally riding around on a bike from set to set, essentially trying to keep up. And if you look at the sheer size and scale of this production, they were shooting multiple parts of these 3 movies all at the same time. This was never done before, ever. Yeah. It was one production for one movie. This was 3. And I mean, they were having to throw concept art at him for him to approve. I remember in the appendices, I can't remember which one it is at this point, but they created a little rubber stamp that had a star on it, and it said, PJ approved. And they're like, do you like this? He'd be like, yes, here, stamp it. Stamped. I mean, you look at them building Fangorn Forest in a massive studio and having to figure out how to use this space effectively, but also create this sense of size and scale, because this is a massive forest, a very old forest.
Mm-hmm.
And by the end of the production on that particular part of the film, you've got all sorts of little critters crawling through all the underbrush and around the trees and everything else.
They thought it was real. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, you had Weta's, actual Weta's.
It was, except for maybe, except for maybe a handful of other productions. Okay, for instance, the Dagobah set for Empire Strikes Back. That was a very elaborate set in and of itself as well. But this one for Fangorn. And then you go to the Bigatures. Oh my freaking gosh. I mean, Orthanc. Or Isengard. Minas Tirith. Barad-dûr. Hours upon hours of model building and just putting in every little slight little detail, so that when the camera passed over it, it looked real. It's mind-boggling the sheer amount of man-hours that it took to do these Bigatures.
Mm-hmm.
Just absolutely mind-blowing, and nothing has topped it since. I mean, let's be honest here. Yeah, they can do everything in CGI, but CGI can
not everything.
Get you so. No, not everything. But here's the thing:
I think people appreciate the realism of stuff, like creating miniatures of stuff, and then having a camera fly through, or creating bigatures of stuff, and having, like, people still enjoy, and myself included, the original Japanese, Godzilla movies, because it was just like, hey, here's these miniatures that we created, and this like Godzilla puppet, and he's like walking through, and they added
puppet,
some.
It was a guy in a suit.
Oh, okay, it was a guy in a suit, but you know what I mean. Like, it was it like they created this, realism to it, and people still enjoy it, and I think the same thing for the Lord of the Rings versus the Hobbit. They had guys in prosthetics versus just like CGI villains, and I appreciated the Lord of the Rings versus the Hobbit because of the practical effects versus all of the CGI that was put in. And I know, Orange, you're going to go into the Hobbit movies going forward.
To answer Neozoic first, though, I want to say this. To answer his question, it's a very simple answer. Let me get my camera back on here. No. Nope. There is not a single one. Star Wars, Terminator, nothing that compares to Tolkien's work. There will never be anything that can match his work. He inspired all the shit that came after him, or all the shit. He inspired Star Wars. He inspired Harry Potter, Song of Ice and Fire. People look to his works for
D&D campaigns. Come on.
D&D campaigns. I mean, you're not, or you do have other people who came before Tolkien, H.P. Lovecraft, and many others who are also very good. But they never went into the same depths as Tolkien, where he created languages, a history, a mythology.
Mm-hmm.
He created so many different characters, and he wanted to basically, I am creating these because I want a good story to read. That is why he did it. He didn't do it for all of us. He did it because he wanted a good story to read. And so he created his story that he would enjoy reading. And it became, unintended, mind you, it became such a cult following. 70s, before Star Wars even came out, there was the whole Lord of the Rings craze back during the 70s, or shortly after he died in 73. I mean, hippies were reading Lord of the Rings.
Yep.
And then Star Wars came out, and that was the new best thing. And Lord of the Rings kind of took a solid back seat for a while. But
they even had the animated. They even had the animated Hobbit movie. Yeah.
As well as the other
the
movies, Lord of the Rings and Return of the King.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I've never seen those two, but I have seen the Hobbit one. But
I have.
Nice. But Star Wars will not ever be as good as Lord of the Rings. Nor will Avatar, The Last Airbender. I mean, don't get me wrong, I love Avatar, The Last Airbender. Would Star Wars, George Lucas, and the old EU canon and Avatar, The Last Airbender be considered to be the same? No, they would not. As much as I love the EU, they put Filoni taint in the EU.
Also, like the Star Wars canon for the EU, it wasn't all, like, George Lucas came up with the platform, but the EU was all of these other creators. For Tolkien, it was him. He created everything. He created the lore. He created the languages. He created the culture of each different race. That wasn't a one-man job for Star Wars. And to be frank, Star Wars, when it was originally created, like, all of the movies were PG before the prequels came out with episode 3. Revenge of the Sith was PG-13. Everything other than that was PG to that point. Lord of the Rings wasn't created for children. Star Wars was. And I think that's a big difference.
Yeah. Steve, good to see you. Wheel of Time books actually surpass Tolkien in terms of lore. And, I mean, maybe it does. I personally have not read Wheel of Time. Maybe someday I will. However, I have not read anything, and I've read quite a lot. I'm actually starting to lose interest in reading nowadays. However, I might, as I said, I might actually give Wheel of Time a chance. But I'll have to take your word for that, Stieg. Also, you are very much correct in that most of Star Wars' lore was written and added on a pile of people. Tolkien did this stuff alone. You are absolutely correct. It took an army to create what Star Wars became, which was very much beloved. However, Tolkien, yes, he has a clarification. The Wheel of Time surpasses Tolkien in terms of amount of lore. I meant. Okay, all right. I can agree to that maybe, because there's like 15 books, I believe, to Wheel of Time, 14, 15.
And here's the other thing too, in terms of mass amounts of lore and just the base material itself. There's only one other literary work that even comes close to Tolkien, and it has nothing to do with George Martin. Frank Herbert's Dune. Just the original 5 or 6 books, just on their own. You want to talk about massive world building and a lot of lore, it's there. Now, granted, yes, Frank Herbert's son has kind of picked up the torch and carried on. He's gone back and filled in a lot of gaps. Him and Kevin Anderson wrote the Butlerian Jihad trilogy of books. That's around the 3 main houses from the Dune universe, and they've done a lot of other books and everything. They even concluded that particular storyline that takes place before the Dune saga, and even finishes up the original timeline. That's a small feat in and of itself.
Yeah.
But that, I would say, granted, it's a sci-fi genre. It's not fantasy, but still, the sheer amount of lore and history and the time it took to get it all done. It's taken one man's lifetime and part of a good chunk of his son's lifetime to finish.
Yeah,
that's no small thing. But still, to no disrespect to Professor Tolkien, his work is, I know he wouldn't necessarily consider it such, but his work is a masterpiece.
Yeah. Stephen Erickson's
yes, we got shown here
has more lore than Tolkien as well. I mean, yes, now, Tolkien's gone, so you can't really add to the lore that he has. But the rich detail, this man, sure, you guys are these books have, or you can fill these books with a lot of information, Steve. But did they have? Now, don't get me wrong. Don't take it as I am disagreeing with you. I'm simply asking because I do not know. Do they have, or these authors, did they have linguistics? Did they go into it with the detail of Tolkien? Orange Hat, true. Since Star Wars has the Filoni tape, the Avatar has Legend, Lord. No, it really doesn't. And Neozoic, you're absolutely right. It's all a matter of personal appetite, which one you like the most. Those of us who are lucky enough to like all of it are doing really well with content. Yes. Very much. I have personal preferences. There are certain things that it's like, yes, I have looked at some of the stuff that they have come out with on or with the Star Wars stuff. I won't review it because it's like I'm just looking at it through brain dead curiosity at this point. However, what I do report on is what I think is more important, which I got a thing coming out tomorrow about that Saltburn movie.
I wanted to comment on the linguistics end. Maybe that's why Tolkien was so set apart in his world building, because he understood why language was different for each different set of people. Like, he knew why the Rohirrim were different from the people of the Dunedain, who were different from the men of Gondor. And he created different lores for different backgrounds of peoples. And so that's why maybe his stuff stands the test of time, because he came from a linguistics and arguably just like a study of human nature background of why peoples were different and why lore influences a history of people. Why? Because he was trying to create Lord of the Rings as a lore for the UK, right?
England, yeah.
If I'm not mistaken,
he was creating it as a mythology for the UK, and
right.
Yeah, I'm not faulting them. I'm actually just asking. Now, it is good that they have the lore that they have.
Excuse me, sorry.
And that is good. I just like you said, preference, man, preference.
Yeah, preference is a big thing.
Erickson has some kick-ass stuff in his work that stems from his background As an archaeologist, though, his civilization building is off the chart. That sounds pretty cool.
Yeah.
I mean, that's something that a lot of, because honestly, Rick Riordan, as much as I think he is a fucking idiot now, I actually like the Percy Jackson books. The 5 that he did, or it was like 4 or 5 that he did, from Lightning Thief to the last one where they concluded that adventure, so to speak. And honestly, those books are meant for kids,
young adults.
But I honestly thought they were young adults. Also, another good young adult series is from Pittacus Lore, which is, I do believe, a pseudonym, but it's the I Am Number 4 series, the Lorien Legacies. Great stuff in those books, and I honestly thought that they were very well written.
Yeah, I liked those when I was younger. Seth the Assassin trailer. Like I said, I'm going to be doing a video on that tomorrow because I really think it needs to be addressed about that Saltburn thing. But getting back to Lord of the Rings, because we kind of diverted there. Getting also back to What a Workshop.
Yes.
The stuff that they built, the stuff that they made. Lord of the Rings was also the very first movie to introduce a sword that has a hollow pommel, which is Anduril, or the Sword of Elrond, or Anduril as well as Narsil.
Yeah, forged from the shards of Narsil.
Yep. George R. R. Martin and Abercrombie make use of their education in psychology in their books. It certainly enhances them. That is also good on their part. I don't think too much of Martin because he is an asshole, but if his books are well written, good on him. But getting back to the topic, we've been going off topic for a bit, but getting back to the topic. No, it's not your fault. It's a stimulating topic. What a Workshop. The thing that I liked about them is that they had literally like 10,000 Hobbit feet made. Freaking like 50,000 or 40,000 freaking Uric high limbs made. I mean, they were and these things are not just rubber, folks. These are like foam, latex. You have to put your arm in trash or in plastic bags just to get these things to slip onto you. And when you can bend your arm like this and whatnot, it is so tight that it actually bends with you. They
put in a lot of effort for this. Yeah.
And
well,
the one thing that really saved them was the fact that they actually had a person who built a forge inside of What a Workshop. Who actually has a knowledge of sword making, because this guy, it takes
they got a literal blacksmith for this.
And it takes
that was the thing that really impressed me.
Swords. And this dude spent like 3 to 6 days every fucking day of the year churning out swords for this movie before the
quality shows. The quality shows, because to this day you can still watch it and you go, it doesn't age. You know what I mean? There's certain movies that don't age. Like you can watch The Godfather today and you can understand that it's in the world of the 70s, but there's no aging in it. Like you can watch it, and maybe because it's a fantasy series and it's based out of like, that medieval style looking stuff, but like you look at Rivendell, you look at the mail that they were wearing or all of the costumes, it holds up. Like, can somebody look up, was one of the Oscars given to the wardrobe department? Because
I do believe
they deserve.
I'm pretty sure it was.
Okay, can someone look that up? Because
I'm almost certain.
Because the costume department deserves the amount of effort that they put in.
I'm almost 99% certain that year, for Return of the King at least, they did win. If not for all 3 years, perhaps, they did win
They should have,
costume
because
or best prosthetic.
yeah,
Well,
or
here's
at
the thing,
least set
you know,
design too,
here's
because set design put in a lot of work as well.
well, I think, yeah, you know, here's the thing. Bill Lawson, who is the lead costume designer for these movies, worked on all three of these movies and everything up to the end. She had to look at these films from a very particular perspective, because while everybody else was focused on dialogue or stunt coordination or whatever, she was looking at, okay, I have a certain amount of information about how these people dressed. Now I need to translate that in a way that will be filmable on screen. Not to mention, I have to figure out how many duplicates of these costumes I have to make for the main stars, for the stunt people, and for the scale people. You know, for like
Scale
the
doubles,
hobbits,
yeah.
and for the scale doubles.
Hobbits and dwarves.
Hobbits and dwarves primarily.
Yeah.
That was a massive undertaking for her and her team. It is, you know, she draws a lot of inspiration from Tolkien's work, from the artistry that Alan Lee and John Howe did, not to mention a lot of the other concept artists who worked on these films did as well. Not to mention probably going back into the history of Middle Earth that Tolkien created. And, you know, Stig brings us up here. And Stig, I have seen you around. I have not ever had a chance to really interact with you, but I know of you and I respect your opinion on a lot of things. So it is good to see it. But he brings this up. One thing Fantasy Worlds kind of screws up is they keep their worlds in a technological limbo. Some tech in the Silmarillion, as in Lord of the Rings millennia later, Middle Earth never advanced tech-wise. Yes,
Nope,
that is
right.
the wonderful thing. It somewhat stays static, and that's the way it should be. Middle Earth
ways,
is a
yes.
medieval realm.
And that's also because
you know,
of Tolkien.
Yes.
Tolkien did not like technological
way.
advance. He didn't want
Yeah.
technological advance. He was very much against technology. As I said earlier, I don't think you were here for this, Steve. There's a quote by Tolkien: one of the world's worst inventions is the internal combustion engine.
Well, and that's why the bad guy had the gunpowder for the siege of Helm's Deep.
Yeah, and that it was also one of the things that they said in the movie. I don't know if it's from the book, but we will drive the machine of war. Basically, he was very much making it so that machines were very much evil and twisted from the things that they did. Trivia for you. I wanted to actually read this out loud. In Bilbao, Spain, back in the day, they had a certain type of short sword. It looks like Sting. It was named the Bilbo blade for short, and that is how Tolkien named Bilbo. That's actually quite interesting right there, man. Considering that they made 2 scales of Sting, there's one or off screen over there that is the sword for a human-sized person like me for Sting. And then you have the one that is very much like this big, which is about a letter opener size, which actually is it, because people don't realize this. Sting is it's a dagger. It's the equivalent of a dagger made in the forges of Gondolin. Glamdring, which is Gandalf's sword, is of the same make, along with Orcrist, which was Thorin's sword from the Hobbit movies and books, or books and movies. I'm gonna get that. I'm gonna get that timing right because books came first. But anyway, the blades of Gondolin would glow blue in the presence of orcs or twisted life, which came from either Melkor or Sauron. And one of the things I do like, because this was mentioned in the appendices of The Hobbit, was that when Thorin was buried with Orcrist, the blade, or if orcs ever did try to go into the tomb to pillage it or to plunder it, the blade would glow and it would scare them off. And also, they made note in Lord of the Rings that Glamdring does glow in the Mines of Moria, which they don't show, sadly. But if you guys watched the Return of the King, where he's talking with Pippin, I do believe, because I've watched this on the digital end of it, that the 4K Blu-rays or the 4K digital for Lord of the Rings, they actually did an enhancement of Glamdring where it is blue. The blade itself, I believe, is blue. Now, I don't know if that was done from the 4K or if that was just something I missed when in the
No, because here's the thing: all throughout the Blu-ray extended editions is the one we have. Glamdring throughout all three movies never glows blue, but more so in Return of the King, Glamdring never glows blue. So that was something they did post-production before the 4K transfer. So that would be my most likely guess, and it's probably the case. So, but the thing I appreciated most about these movies is the sheer amount of effort that these people, the crew and everything, the forge workers, the costumers, the stunt coordinators, but not only that, the people that worked with the horses. That right there was a challenge in and of itself, because working with horses on film is not easy. Now, I've not been around horses.
I have. And they were bringing in people from all around New Zealand, people, ranchers and whatnot, to get all the horses they needed. I do want to reiterate this from earlier because I don't think Stieg was here. Stieg says, I think Tolkien would have approved of Jackson's movies. I don't think he would have good things to say about all the merch, though. I don't know if you knew, Stieg, but I've said it so many times in so many videos and whatnot. He sold the movie rights of of his works for $1.
One single dollar.
Because he knew that they would never be able to be faithfully adapted to his liking in his lifetime or even beyond his lifetime. In fact, during the 50s, from that letter, or I think it's like letter 209, he excoriated a movie director who tried to adapt his work back in the 50s. And they were just pulling up all the fight scenes to do all the fight scenes. And he's like, that is not what my movies are about. You murdered my work. So, yes, while I do believe, again, I do believe that Tolkien, if he was alive to see this, he would appreciate the adaptation. I do not necessarily think he would approve of it. He would appreciate it because he would recognize that these people put their hearts, souls, and everything into respecting his work. But they also realized you can't translate it from page to screen faithfully.
No. Yeah.
And
you can stick to, and that's what's like, it's not a translation, it's an adaptation.
Yes. And
it's, but so like my question for you guys would be like, Tolkien purists, can you be a Tolkien purist and like the book and the movies? Because gatekeeping for Tolkien is a little bit different. You can either be, you can be a book purist, you can be a movie purist, you can like both the books and the movies and hate the new TV series that totally destroyed Tolkien. But it's like, it's one of those things is like it's different than like Star Wars gatekeeping.
I could tell you right now, Tolkien would not approve of this stuff. To get back to his comment, I don't think he would have good things to say about.
No, he hated when people had the ring.
Yeah, this ring.
He hated that shit.
Is an embodiment of evil.
He hated it. Yeah, so, he hated it.
It's like, you guys do know that ring was the crux of the movie, was the thing to be destroyed because it was literally the embodiment of evil. And so I do recognize that Tolkien might not approve of that. But I do think that he would appreciate the attempt of adaptation from Peter Jackson.
Let's frame it this way, and I want to kind of chime in with the two threads that we're tugging on here. Would Tolkien have been cordial and respectful to the cast and crew and even Jackson?
Oh, of course.
Yes, he would have.
Of course.
But I think because he was a proper British gentleman and a professor, a well-respected professor at Oxford. But on the same token, he would have also said, no pun intended, you have not faithfully adapted my work. For that, I have to give you I have to criticize you here.
Most likely he would have...
Yeah.
Go ahead. Finish your point.
He would have been respectful, but at the same time, he would have also criticized them for making the changes that they made.
Specifically, specific is Tom Bombadil. He was very much he very much liked the character that he created in Tom Bombadil.
Yes, that is true. And they pretty much just completely removed that character from the narrative of the movies. The other matter is this, and I kind of want to dig in a little bit into the appendices and everything going beyond just Lord of the Rings and a little bit into the Merlin. And this is a question also that I want for the chat and for the three of us. Which do you think was the more interesting MacGuffin? The Ring of Power or the Silmarils? The jewels themselves? Because here's the thing. The Silmarils, to the best of my knowledge, were lost. They were never fully destroyed because they were a trio of jewels that were created from the lights of the Tree of Valinor.
Right.
The Ring of Power is obviously the ring that Sauron created when he created the other rings of power. So,
right.
Which do you think was actually the better of the two MacGuffins? I think that's the proper term for these items.
Yes. I think the Silmarils. I have not fully read through the Silmarillion.
You should.
I got as far as the creation of dwarves and elves and dwarves, and at that time I was just it's like, oh my god, this book is so heavy.
It's because it's written. It's not The Hobbit or The Lord of the Rings where he wrote it to be a narrative.
It reads
like a history book.
Yeah.
Like it's like this happened and then this happened and then this happened. It's dry. Here's a textbook. It's a textbook.
But what I understand of the Silmarils is that they are 3 jewels of purity, where the Lord, or where the One Ring is essentially a vessel of evil.
Evil.
It is purity or it is evil incarnate, essentially.
And he wrote them to be like we see things in history, where you'll see things, they don't necessarily repeat, but they rhyme. If that makes sense. Like if you see things just like on a timeline in history. And so he kind of wrote like Lord of the Rings from like Frodo or Bilbo onward. This is like the end of the Third Age. So it mimics or it rhymes with things that happened in the Second Age. So I would say the Silmarils would be a better MacGuffin, because if you read the history of Middle Earth and like the Book of Lost Tales and the Silmarillion and everything, like magic is slowly leaving
Yeah.
Middle Earth, and it's given over to humans for them to do what they want with it. So it's a smaller image of what they've seen before in the past. So yeah, I would say the Silmarils.
I would be inclined to agree with you, Kate. What do you think, bud? Or did you already answer and I just missed it? I'm sorry.
No, I believe that she has a point. The second half of the Silmarillion is easier read than the first half. I will definitely have to get back into it then. I read it when it was written. Yeah, it was written like the Bible, which is basically what it is for this world. Yes.
For his world, yeah. The Silmarillion is very much described as Tolkien's Bible for Middle-earth. I mean, I've read it from cover to cover, and I've still read it at least 2 or 3 times over. I mean, I guess having a maybe a different disposition, I enjoy the structure by which how he wrote the Silmarillion. It didn't bog me down, but that's just personal preference more than anything else.
But also it was
when
put
they announced the
together
Rings of
by his
Power,
son as like
yes,
it was edited together
that's true too.
of writings that he did. So it wasn't a narrative that he wrote like The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings had been.
Although there is similarities in structure within the Silmarillion and in the Lord of the Rings. Not so much with The Hobbit. But here's the thing. Back a couple of years ago when they announced the Rings of Power, I was actually really excited. Because I was like, oh my gosh, we're gonna get the Silmarillion. And I was really
I thought so too.
I'm not gonna lie.
I thought so too. I was like, they'll be able to do the Silmarillion, and then they're like, we don't have the rights to that. And I was like, well, dang.
Yeah, and then I find out what they're doing, and I'm like, you pay all that money, you didn't even get the Silmarillion? Why bother?
Yeah, they didn't get the rights.
They didn't get the rights to anything else other than what they already had for the movies.
Yeah, for the Second Age.
Yeah. I was like,
what the freaking hell?
No, how are you going to do the Second Age when you don't have any of the rights to the Second Age? Like, what?
Yeah, and Stig, that is true too. He had most of the Silmarillion written early. He wrote it. He started to write a lot of the Silmarillion and the Book of Lost Tales, which they did mine rather considerably for lore and backstory for the Lord of the Rings itself. I mean, Jackson and Philippa Boyens and Fran Walsh, they all dug into all of this, I think, to get as much as they could for the story and to make it feel real. I mean, the fact that you have reference to Morgoth in the Fellowship in the extended cut when they say it was a Balrog of Morgoth, and most people are going, for those of us who didn't know who Morgoth was, what does that mean? But for those of us who knew, we could. No, I'm not saying this to be derisive or anything, but you could educate. Who's Morgoth? This is Morgoth. He was the big bad. He was the bigger bad than Sauron himself.
Sauron's like the lieutenant of
He was
essentially. I mean,
where Sauron is pretty much a very empowered demon in biblical shapes. Morgoth is the devil.
Yes.
Right.
Yes, Morgoth
exactly. Yeah.
I mean, the thing you have to remember, and I think most
like
people
Lucifer himself versus like Beelzebub.
Tolkien was a very devout Catholic. He wrote the Silmarillion in very much a similar form as Genesis of the Bible, specifically.
Yeah.
Just Genesis
for
itself.
Sure. For sure.
And he used imagery likened to Genesis of the Christian Bible or even the Jewish Torah. Because the first 5 books are the same. With Morgoth, or Melkor, which was his proper name. He just took the name Morgoth once he broke ranks and was cast out or left, or I can't remember the exact details, but he broke
All of
ranks
the
with the
above,
rest of all of the above, essentially. And he became Tolkien's Satan, essentially. The thing that, and I do see your comment here. Yeah, Stig, you're right. The first half of the Silmarillion, and then it goes into the backstory of Beren and Luthien and all that history that's wrapped up in there, and Morgoth attacking Valinor with Ungoliant and his legions and everything, and destroying, I think it's like the 2 or 3 trees, and then crafting the Silmarils themselves. All of that is a background for the Lord of the Rings itself. I mean, you look at the similarities and everything. I mean, the reference that Saruman makes to the Ring of Barahir. The Ring of Barahir was Beren was a item of Beren and Luthien. Yeah. And that's the thing that I would have loved, and I would have wholeheartedly accepted if they had made some minor changes, but they couldn't even get the damn rights. Amazon couldn't get the damn rights to the freaking Silmarillion. Now, I don't know if it was on behalf of the Tolkien estate or whatever the case is, but
I know that
utterly botched it.
They did. They so absolutely. Mad. And they did it on purpose because apparently he, like, I forget what his name is, the CEO, the founder of Amazon. What's his name?
Jeff Bezos.
Yeah, Bezos was like, basically, get me Game of Thrones. He was like, get me our version of Game of Thrones. So they're like, okay, instead of creating something new, they were like, hey, let's build off of something that already has a tremendous fan base. Which, okay, all right, cool. But also buy the rights to the frickin' Silmarillion or the Book of Lost Tales or something other than just The Hobbit and the Lord of the Rings, which has been done recently, which you don't need to redo anytime soon. And they did a bait and switch because they came out and they were like, here's these images of what we're gonna do, and it was the 2 trees in Valinor, and then I forget what the second image was, but it was like, oh sweet, they're gonna do the Silmarillion.
I think it was supposed to. I think it was supposed to be Gondolin or something, or
Noldor you were like, okay, so it's gonna be Gondolin.
One of the Elven Kingdoms. One of the Elven Kingdoms.
Exactly. And you're like, okay, cool, because the fall of Gondolin, or however you pronounce it, is one of the first things that was written by Tolkien when he was in like that German hospital getting over trench warfare. It was like the first things that he had written about Middle Earth. So you're like, sweet, cool. And then they did a bait and switch, and then they came out and they're like, hey, if you're a Tolkien purist, you're not going to like our TV show. We don't have the rights to anything from the Second Age. And you're like, okay, well, shoot. Well, okay, so they told us in advance, hey, we don't have the rights to these things. If you're a Tolkien purist, don't watch our stuff. So guess what? I didn't watch their show. And then after it didn't do successfully, they're like, hey, guess what? If you didn't watch our show, it's because you're a bigot and you're a racist. And I was like, you straight up told me not to watch this, because if I were a Tolkien purist, I wouldn't like your show. And so I took you at your word and I didn't watch it. And now I'm a bigot and now I'm a racist. Awesome. Thanks for the bait and switch. Appreciate it so much.
But here's, as bad as Rings of Power is, and I'm sorry, I don't care.
For sure. I've heard it's terrible.
I'm sorry. I don't care. I don't care how many apologists there are out there who will try to explain away all of the issues with Rings of Power. That show is a complete and utter disgrace.
Not where
And
I wanted this to go.
Sorry.
Sorry you left and you couldn't direct us in the right direction. We were talking about how
I'm going to
they
bring
did.
it. No, I'm going to.
Go ahead, bring it back. My bad.
Hold on.
Go ahead.
Let him finish.
Here's the thing. As bad as Rings of Power was, you look at the Lord of the Rings minus the Hobbit, the Lord of the Rings itself. It makes up for every single screw up that was done in the Rings of Power, because they knew that if they didn't get this right, the fans and even the purists would not sign off, because if you had the fans on your side of the production, then they will tell the general public, you go see these movies.
It would have done well. Good. Yeah, it would have done well if they had them on their side. Yeah. I agree with you.
They did do that damn well. But
my thoughts on
the same token, no. Go
my
ahead.
thoughts on Rings of Power.
Really, I'm done. Go ahead.
It's not Tolkien's work at all. They have the characters' names. They have the character. Let me finish. They have the characters' names. They have the character or the timelines and shit. It doesn't fucking mean it is Tolkien.
Correct.
And I actually made a promise to Tolkien himself, or rather his memory, that I would never watch a full episode of that show. And I have kept that promise, and I will continue to keep that promise. It's impossible to see clips of it here and there, so I would never make a promise of saying I'm going to not watch a single piece of it, because it's impossible to dodge all that. But essentially what they did, there is speculation that the original, during Christopher Tolkien's life, while he was still alive, there was speculation that the original contract was that if you change anything that harms the lore that is established, we pull your project. After Christopher Tolkien died, they were given the go-ahead to do all sorts of stupid shit. And yes, I am going to bring this up because unfortunately it was brought up during this stream. There is no such fucking thing as black elves, folks. Now, am I saying that a black person can't enjoy Lord of the Rings? No. I am not.
No, we're just saying the lore says one thing.
Yes, the lore does not have fucking black elves. The lore does not have fucking black dwarves. The lore does not have female dwarves who are freaking beardless. They have beards. And to point that out isn't freaking bigotry, as a lot of them started to claim. It is simply saying that you can identify with people based on more than superficial things like skin color or sexuality. Me, again,
yep.
I can identify with several people, or all the main characters in Star Wars. I can identify with all of them, including Princess Leia and the droids and the Wookiee. For Lord of the Rings, I can identify with many of the different characters. And, I mean, Aragorn, the man is freaking courageous as hell.
Frodo. You can identify with everybody, because, like, you're like, yes. Oh, wow, I feel foolish sometimes. Pippin, you know, hello.
You can feel like you have the best intentions and sometimes they go awry. That would be Merry. You can feel like Bilbo, who sometimes if you shed a lot of weight off of you, or mental and stressful weight, that was him letting go of the ring. He was letting go of something that had taken hold of him for 60 years. And yet he was able to have a clear head afterward. I thought up an ending for my book.
And that's why the hobbits were the only ones who could hold on to the ring, bring it to its knees basically by ending it. That's why I'll stand up, like last week I said I'll stand up for Frodo.
Yes.
The hobbits were the only ones, and that's, like in the beginning, if you read the books for the Lord of the Rings, and even before you read the Hobbit, there is this like prelude of concerning hobbits, and it's basically in the extended editions of the Lord of the Rings before Fellowship of the Ring, he reads, I think, 80% of what is written in concerning hobbits in the prelude of Lord of the Rings. And it tells you everything you need to know about the hobbits, what they want, what they yearn for, what their hobbies are, what they're like. And that's why it's beautiful when Gandalf says, you can learn everything about them in a day, and still after 100 years they surprise you. That's why he chose a hobbit to carry the ring to Mordor. And you had talked about this last week, Orange, of the wizard and his form choosing things out of not just out of emotion, but when he had turned to Gandalf the White, less out of emotion and more out of, okay, I've got a job to do. This is what I've got to do. So when we see Gandalf the Grey in the Fellowship of the Ring, he's like, the ring bearer will decide. And then later on, when you see him in The Two Towers and Return of the King, at least in the books, he's like, this is what we're going to do. He's not relying on anybody else to make a decision because he knows the outcome that needs to happen. Anyway.
Wants I'm guessing this is the question because my internet crashed. I am sorry about that, folks. Apparently my internet company lied. But getting back to this. Also, if Tolkien was alive today, did you think J.R.R. would remove his name from any media that is adaptation of his book, like how Alan Moore removed his name from the adaptation of his work, or not really? I do believe that he would make his disdain for the merchandise very well known. I do believe that he would not have, or I do believe that he wouldn't remove anything from his works. However, he would be very vocal in his disdain for anything that misused his work.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Here's the thing about Professor Tolkien, and I do refer to him as his proper title. He was a professor, very well respected one.
That is true.
Yep.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, it's okay. It's all right. The thing about Tolkien that I have been able to infer from all the interviews I've seen with the movies and reading some of his own correspondence, this work was very personal to him, but he also wanted people to add their own voice to it, and people have. I would say these movies are part of that addition of other people adding their voice to this world. I mean, there have been people who have written books that take place after Return of the King. There is even a novel that I think came out in like the 70s or 80s or anything that's called After the King. And it's a series of short stories. It's like an anthology or whatever of different stories that takes place in Middle Earth. I mean, there was even notes that Tolkien had done and everything, had written out and everything that was supposed to be, I think it's in the History of Middle Earth books that his son compiled that referred to a new menace that was starting to emerge in Middle Earth. But he never got any further into it because, unfortunately, he died. I think Tolkien would have admonished and maybe even yanked the rights or told them, you can't use my name on this. This does not represent me. But I don't think he would have gone as far as some people would nowadays because the man, well, let's be honest, he had a lot more class and a lot more tact than a lot of people do nowadays. So, but that's the difference between the world of 2001 to 2003 and the world of 2023. These movies were widely well accepted. I would say very much so. There were very few people that I knew of that had anything negative to say about them, except for maybe, they were a little too long. Hold my beer. But if you didn't like these movies, nobody called you a racist or a bigot for it. They just like, okay, cool, you didn't like them? All right, it's not your thing. These movies are very much a snapshot of the world in which they were released. I know things have gone rather awry over the last several years. I would be remiss to say if that wasn't the fact of the matter. But these movies not only are great stories in and of themselves, but they give us a chance to go back to what would be perceived, at least for people of our age, as a simpler time. Yes, there was strife in the world. Yes, we were dealing with the aftermath of the September 11th event and even several other events that had happened in those years. But these movies are an escape, which was Tolkien's intent, which was the intent of Peter Jackson, Philip O'Boyens, and Fran Walsh.
Absolutely. Yeah.
They were a piece of escapism, but they also speak to the inner part of ourselves, to our soul, to our conscience. As Galadriel so eloquently said and was so well performed by Cate Blanchett. And I even still tear up at this line from time to time. Even the smallest person can change the course of the future. She was right. Tolkien was right. I don't know if that line is specifically in any of the novels. It very well may be. But if Tolkien was speaking through Galadriel in that particular moment, Tolkien was right.
Mm-hmm.
The smallest person. It doesn't have to regard physical size or stature. The smallest person can change the course of the future.
Another good
Absolutely.
line.
And that's one of the things I love about it.
Yeah. That is of Tolkien. Because this, I do remember reading this in The Hobbit. I do believe it was paraphrased in the Hobbit movie. If people would value home more than gold, the world would be a merrier place.
And what a word of wisdom. What a word of wisdom.
I mean,
because a lot of the problems of the world could be solved around the dinner table.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
I mean, yes, while there is capitalism and whatnot, there is much more value to be had in the word or in words, because words can carry more weight than money can.
Well, also, if you have a strong moral compass, which I think is formed at the dinner table, talking about your day, you're talking about your problems, talking about stuff, having people who know you, keep you in check, things like that. If your moral compass is pointing in the right direction or toward semi the right direction, you don't have to put in all of these extra laws and regulations. Like, just like getting back to the Lord of the Rings, the hobbits, they wanted peace and quiet, and they wanted to smoke their pipe weed, and they wanted to grow gardens, and they wanted to have families, and they just wanted to have a peaceful life. So when they had the ring, when Bilbo and Frodo had the ring, yes, it kind of twisted their moral compass, but because their moral compass was facing relatively toward I don't want to control other people, I just want a peaceful life, it wasn't as much of a pull as, like for Boromir, for example. He was like, I want the ability to help my people, to save my people, to have the power to keep off, these evil forces. Like he desired power hobbits don't desire power, so they weren't as easily swayed. So that's why the hobbits were the exact right people in order for the wizard to come in and sway them perfectly. So even though we get Saruman who's making fun of Gandalf and saying, like, oh, you have the soft spot for these hobbits, it was the hobbits who were able to, move the Ents to go to war to take down Saruman and to remove his power from Isengard. And the hobbits were the perfect, duo to climb up Mount Doom and destroy the ring and all of that. So, it kind of like, it's like the perfect irony of everything, if that makes sense.
For those of you who cannot read the text above, it says, when you are in the Battle of Pelennor Fields and you hear an elf and a dwarf counting nearby.
You know you're fucked.
Yeah, it's like, I mean, getting back. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. I didn't have anything to say, so by all means, please. Really.
Getting back to stuff we love about the movie, or the movies and the lore and whatnot, I did want to cover something from Return of the King, because we were discussing Grond in the last one, and I couldn't remember that poem. Well, I have found that in the appendices of the movies. And
nice.
They actually, they were so detailed that they stitched into a lot of stuff, or a lot of the orcs and their armor and whatnot. Grond, which was made solely of lead, by the way, folks, and the inscriptions on Grond would say no wall between, no power against, no endurance of souls, Grond, the will of Mordor. So,
wow.
I mean, when they brought it up as the wolf's head, as the great battering ram that was a tribute to Morgoth's warhammer, I thought that was something that... Now, when I say that they put all of this stuff in their armor, folks, you'll never see it, because they don't zoom in on the orc's armor. So you can only learn this stuff in the appendices. When they were talking about the battle on the slopes of Mount Doom in the prologue, they have orc leather armor that has all the black speech written in there, which are like spells and incantations to help them and whatnot. And it's just really well done. And when these people went in with the movies, I mean, Richard Taylor at What a Workshop told them, treat this as if it is the most important thing you will do in your life. And if you cannot bring that level of commitment, then you are not, or then you really should not be here. And God bless that man for saying that, because these movies, they're great. I love them.
Yeah. And you can tell the amount of care that was put into them.
Yeah. Let me cover some of the. Sorry, Ambassador, but let me cover some of the stuff from the chat.
No.
Also, did you think evil cannot create anything new, but can only corrupt what is good or force have invented or made? Is true in the real world, besides the obvious, what Hollywood is doing. Yes, I do believe that evil, or unfortunately, that is a very true thing. Because evil, take World War II, for example. Take World War I and World War II. Chemical warfare came from elements that were not derived for that purpose. They were twisted for that purpose.
Yep.
So, yeah, it doesn't work. Or that evil cannot create anything new. They can only corrupt and ruin what good forces have invented or made. Yes. Also, Steve Kenobi, if your moral compass always points directly at yourself, you will never learn much of the world around you. Very true. The cheapest toy in the world and the most valuable treasure are words. Also very true. But anyway, getting back into it, what else did you guys want to share from the movies and the appendices and whatnot?
I think for myself, the things I appreciated most were honestly the craftsmanship of the armor, the craftsmanship of the weapons, the sets. I mean, I love these movies. Obviously, I wouldn't have been here the last 4 Sundays if I didn't. Just the sheer undertaking to craft all this armor for something as seemingly trivial as a work of fiction. And it's, granted, a great work of fiction, most definitely. But I think one of my favorite moments from the films themselves is not so much the charge of the Rohirrim on the Pelennor fields, but more so the dedication of all these horsemen, all these people that work with horses on a daily basis, these ranchers and the people who came in, the stunt riders, and all of them. I mean, horses were the main means of transportation for centuries.
Mm-hmm.
And when you see, either in reality or digitally, 6,000 horses charging down an embankment, just absolutely almost seemingly no fear whatsoever, it stirs something in you. It did for me, especially because my mother, for all of her years, she has always had a love of horses, and I never understood it. But after seeing the movies and watching all the special features from the extended editions, I finally understood, and I tear up because I hate to see a horse that gets shot with an orc arrow in this movie, and I'm like, you dirty orc! I hope they run your ass over. And I meant it. But it was that dedication to make the actors who were portraying the characters on horseback look as good as they did. But the dedication of the stunt writers and the trainers that worked with the actors as well to get these absolutely amazing shots. Not to mention the sheer guts that it took for Ian McKellen, a man in his, I think, 60s at the time, to get on horseback with no saddle and no bridle. That for me was, I'm like, that took some guts.
Yep.
That took some real guts. Because when he was riding Shadowfax, no bridle, no saddle, rode bareback, and had to train the horse on how to be directed without a saddle or bridle, because this was Shadowfax, the Lord of the Miras, the Lord of all horses.
You would not put
that was a hell of a thing.
Yeah. You put or he was never to be saddled or tamed, because he is a higher being than any other, or than even man.
Yeah.
And have a good night, Happy Dino. The Easter egg prank from Elijah Wood and Dominic is really funny. Yes, for that. Or did you guys ever find that online?
I can't say that I did.
Yeah, look up Elijah Wood and Dominic Monaghan interviews Elijah Wood. Freaking hilarious.
It's pretty great. And
do you wear wigs?
Do you wear wigs? Do you wear them wigs?
Do you wear wigs? Maybe.
What is your favorite wig to wear? It's great.
Just fucking starts cracking up, man.
Well, and it's like they had a good time. Like I said, I went to Comic-Con recently that all 4 of the Hobbits were at, and individually their individual ones were great, and you could tell that they cared about the lore. And I think that's why Tolkien purists and Tolkien himself would not have liked the movies. This is why Tolkien purists are okay with the movies, because you get Dominic in an interview, and he's like, "Hey, look, Viggo's gonna die before us, and in the appendices, like, we're supposed to be buried with him, so we're going to be buried next to him, and he doesn't even have a choice because he's going to die before us." And so you can tell that they've read the appendices of how Merry and Pippin are died with King Aragorn and stuff like that. So it's like, the Tolkien purists are willing to forgive these movie mistakes, or how, it's almost impossible, if not impossible, to translate what was in the books to a movie, to on screen. But that's why Tolkien purists are so, we're gonna back, we're gonna back Christopher Tolkien, we're gonna back Tolkien, we're gonna back all of the things that he like the themes that he held true to. We're going to back him, even people who are atheists, who don't believe in the religion of Catholicism or Christianity that he believed. They'll still back him and his writing, because they feel a sense of ownership to it, of a defensiveness of it. I don't know how else to describe it. I'm talking about, Orange?
Oh yeah, definitely. This person took a photo with John Noble here, and I love the subtitle here above it. Boromir would have taken a better photo.
I do want to address Sith Assassin's comment. You've got it partially right, Trela. What he did was he did buy a horse, but he bought the horse for Liv Tyler's stunt rider and gave the horse to her because he was so impressed with her horsemanship and her skill, and he felt she was just a very kind woman. Unfortunately, she couldn't afford to do it herself. Viggo Mortensen could, so he ended up buying the horse that she rode in place of Liv Tyler for all the shots when she was on horseback for Fellowship, when she was being chased by the Nazgul. So you had partially right, just not entirely. But I think that particular trainer did train several of the actors, but it was specifically her that rode for Liv Tyler.
Not to mention, he also did buy the one the horse that played Borrego. He bought that one for himself.
Yeah,
and
that one,
because
you're right on that.
He wanted to be able to trust that horse, and to have a horse lay down next to you is a very daunting thing. I mean, you have an animal that is very much hundreds of pounds heavier than you that is about to lay down next to you.
Mm-hmm.
So he wanted to be able to trust that horse. He slept next to that horse, folks. That is, I mean, Viggo Mortensen is was one of the most dedicated people to the film. I mean, I'm not saying all the others weren't. I am simply saying that man put such dedication into it, and he went next level with it. I mean, sure, the Hobbits were all dedicated actors as well. But you see behind the scenes where this man, I mean, when they talk, or when most people were talking about dedication and stuff to the roles, they were talking about Viggo. I mean, Viggo scared the hell out of most of the people who played orcs, the stunt performers and whatnot, because that man had such drive, such ferocity. Well, I mean, when he does the Leroy Jenkins in Return of the King, where he's like, for Frodo, and just starts charging, I'm pretty sure everybody, or the people playing the orcs, were like, well, I never thought I'd die fighting side by side against Viggo Mortensen.
Right. He's like actually attacking them as if he needs to defend.
He went
No, I get it. Yeah, he was into it.
I mean,
I would be the same way. It was kind of like it reminds me of the behind the scenes of Star Wars Phantom Menace when Ewan McGregor is like making all of the sounds for the like just making all the noises like, for the lightsabers and stuff.
There tanks.
Yeah, right. It's like mute him during ADR and stuff.
But yeah, what was your thoughts on the upcoming 2024?
One thing I found funny, and this was about. Sorry.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
The War of the Rohirrim with Brian Cox as the voice of Helm Hammerhand. Good choice. Good choice. But I also heard a few other things that kind of turned me off of it, but I'm looking forward to it nonetheless. But yeah, I am going to look at that show and see what I think of it. But Brian Cox as the voice of Helm Hammerhand, I wish they would have gotten Brian Cox in these movies. Because honestly, I think he would have made a good character in one way or the other.
He would have made a good dwarf.
Probably, yeah. He probably would have made a good dwarf, yeah. Or he probably would have made a good would have made a good man or Lord of Men.
Yes,
he would have made. I think that he probably, if not John Noble, if we didn't have John Noble, I think he could have played Denethor pretty well.
Yes, he could have. I agree.
Because Brian Cox is known to play. He has good range. But he also does a good villainous or an unhinged character.
Oh, yeah, definitely. One thing from behind the scenes I found humorous, and we kind of touched on this, the fight between Éowyn and the Witch King. The stunt actor who played both Gothmog and Witch King, when they finally brought that Morning Star, that massive mace and everything to him, they're like, what do you call it? I call it damn heavy.
Yeah.
He's like, I call it damn heavy because you try lifting that thing and swinging it. He's like, my arm was killing me after the scene was done. Yeah. I mean, and you gotta admit, even if it wasn't Miranda Otto, if it was her stunt double, when he was swinging that thing at that stunt double, I feel bad for either the man or woman that was standing in her place, because I'm thinking they don't move just right. Yeah, but okay. Here's the thing: if it had not been digital, if it had not been digital, imagine the damage. Whew.
Well, her arm was broken her character's arm essentially was broken when when he shattered the shield.
Yeah.
Because she was down like this, or a lot of people don't realize this, but when you have a broken arm, you put it up against your chest to keep it from moving, or to keep it from moving. You will literally lash it, if they have the time to do it, they will lash it to their body so that it removes any chance of further harm until you can get it properly set. But another thing, that same actor who played Gothmog and the Witch King, I remember in the appendices, he's like, or they're like, you're going to play Gothmog. What's a Gothmog?
Yeah.
And they also did have the, where he was sleeping in a freaking wheelbarrow, like one of those ones that you wheel around with wood in and whatnot. He fell asleep in one of those because of the long hours he was in the makeup.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
I don't blame him though, because
no.
An elephantitis orc.
Yeah, for sure. Like, come on.
How he was described. Yeah. The elephant man orc.
Yep.
Yeah.
And it's like, or
that's.
Go ahead.
No, you go ahead. I'll say my piece.
No, I forgot what I was saying, so go ahead.
Okay, fine. the one of the funnier stories I remember from the Two Towers, and this is primarily the Battle of Helm's Deep. All the cast and crew, even the lead actors, were at a point dreading, because this was at least 3 or 4 weeks of nothing but night shoots, and partially in rain, but also with hoses spraying water down to make it look like rain. And by the time they were done, they were so freaking spent. But I'm thinking, especially the stunt actors who were playing the Uruk-hai.
Oh yeah, because
there you are. Yeah.
Yeah. Because they had to get out of the wet pieces, and they were spending hours and hours trying to dry all those prosthetics. Hey, MJ1, good to see you. And yes, Sith Assassin, Viggo Mortensen, during the scene or shooting Two Towers, he broke his toe while kicking a helmet, which they kept in the movie because that scream it's like, wow, that was really good.
It just fit. It just fit for losing two of his friends. Yeah.
Yeah. And he was planning on just giving a normal yell, but then and they're like, wow, that was a really good take, and he's like, I broke my toe.
Well, I mean, it's just perfect because, like, okay, so you just left like, the Fellowship just broke up. Sam and Frodo took off. They realized they couldn't do it with everybody making it into Mordor. Then you're like, okay, we're going to go save our friends, Merry and Pippin, because they've been confused with the hobbits who actually have the rings. Let's go find them. And then you just find a pile of dead people, and you're like, well, everything we've been doing has just failed. Like, yeah. It was the perfect take, though. It was a great take.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. And
it's
no, go ahead.
The interesting thing that Tolkien put into these books and was ultimately put into these movies, they all have a point and a counterpoint. They have a point where it seems ultimately, almost seemingly and completely hopeless, that the good guys are going to come out of this on top, and that the bad guys are going to prevail. But then he has a counterpoint where it all swings back in the opposite direction. And you see this particularly, I would say, especially in Two Towers, where it seems like the Rohirrim is going to be destroyed, and even if the Ents sack Orthanc, what's that going to amount to ultimately? But then you have Gandalf and Éomer come in with a good chunk of the Rohirrim, charge down that very steep, perilous hill, and ultimately they win. Tolkien did all that by design, and it's amazing that they were able to so very, very seamlessly translate that from the books into the movies, because even though Tolkien himself never suspected that they would be able to faithfully adapt these movies, in a way he almost wrote these ideally for them to be translated from the written word, the books, into a film. As much as he derided in certain ways the idea of these books being made into movies, he unintentionally wrote it so where it could be translated that way.
Yep.
That's the crazy thing.
Yep.
The irony of ironies. Yeah. And
yes,
but,
exactly.
And that's why gatekeeping for Lord of the Rings is different than gatekeeping for like, let's say, Doctor Who or Star Wars, because you can be a purist about the books and also a purist about the movies, because you understand that it can't be a perfect representation when you put it onto film. But if you stay true to the things that matter, like, let's take let's take an adaptation like Baz Luhrmann's Great Gatsby, for example. He hit all of the plot points, but he missed every single piece of what gave the book a heart. And in, Peter Jackson's Lord of the Rings movies, especially between books 2 and 3 and movies 2 and 3, where there's that overlap, okay, he might have missed the plot, but he hit the heart of it. And that's why the Tolkien purists are okay with the movies being wonky when they don't follow suit, because he hit all of the heart points. He didn't hit the plot points. And that's why it matters more of like what's on the inside than what's, on the outside. But he hit both because, visually those movies are amazing as well.
Yep.
Well, and not to mention, they brought up in the appendices, there are certain events that are taking place in Two Towers that actually parallel with events in Return of the King. Like, specifically, the Battle of Pelennor Fields aligns with Frodo and Gollum going into Shelob's lair. But, however, you have that whole episode in Two Towers, not Return of the King. So, in essence, they are staying true to the narrative structure of the stories, even though they've had to swap things around and they've had to redact or completely remove things. That in itself, I don't think any Tolkien purists would necessarily nitpick about. Granted, they very well might, and that's their prerogative to do so. But them having to craft these movies in such a way to where it flows narratively for a movie, but still keeping as much of the framework and the content that exists in the books in there, that's a daunting task, because you have to think, okay, what do we cut out? What do we keep? What do we change? What stays the same? What's going to possibly tick some fans off, and what will they be okay with? And to Tolkien, but to Jackson and Fran Walsh and Philip Boyance's credit, they had somebody on between the three of them that had read all three of the books at least once a year, and I think that was wasn't that Philip Boyance? Because isn't Fran Walsh Peter Jackson's wife, or is it the other woman? I can't remember.
Neither of them are married to him.
No, but there was that sentiment on screen of everybody should read it once a year, because I remember reading or listening to an interview of some of the guys on screen that were like, hey, we read it at least once a year, at least while they were filming it. So that was, it took them like 3 or 4 years to film. But so just to keep it in the back of their mind of like the sentiment of the books and the message that Tolkien wanted to bring. So I mean, as difficult as it is, and we have all acknowledged that Tolkien wouldn't have liked these movie adaptations. I don't know, like it's almost as if like Lord of the Rings fans are like the least toxic. You know what I mean?
I think I found Tom Bombadil's house.
Show it right now. Do it.
Well, real quick, Orange.
Back it up because it's glary.
Actually, Fran Walsh and Peter Jackson actually are married.
Well, son of a bitch.
Yeah. Married in 1987. At least that's what Google says, and I don't think they would lie.
Okay.
Oh, wow. That's a rock on top of that house.
Okay. Yeah. Wow. I'm gonna give it to you.
Well, thank you very much. Wrong one. There we go. And there we go. All right,
just had to adjust my mic. Was the Philippa Boyens was the one that read the Lord of the Rings at least once a year ever since she was a kid or something. I think I remember them saying.
Also,
I think
she knew everything
there are
inside
certain
out,
things.
and she knew where everything
It's
could be.
beautiful. It's a great lore. It's a great lore.
Also, Fran Walsh was not in any of the appendices because they wanted to keep at least one character or one of the three off screen.
Yeah.
Wait, did my audio just like slink or something?
No, you're good. No, you're good.
Okay, just a second.
I don't think so.
Compare Lord of the Rings with other movie adaptations such as 1984, Harry Potter, To Kill a Mockingbird, yada yada. Let's just say that nothing else measures to Lord of the Rings. Harry Potter was good. Don't get me wrong. Never saw the 1984 thing. I did see To Kill a Mockingbird like years ago.
I know what movie you saw
back in high school. Let's just say those books are not for sensitive little bitches nowadays.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is there anything else that we want to cover?
Neozog.
No, I think
want to answer Neozog's question.
You wanted to cover the Gimli versus Legolas numbers, and he had his axe in his nervous system. That little scene.
Oh my god, that at the end of Helm's Deep wasn't in the books, but damn, did they make it great? Because Gimli put himself in a way to win that fight because he got right on or in the middle of two freaking ladders, and it's like 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23. It's like, oh my god.
24.
So when they did get to the final count, it's like 42. 42. Well, I ain't bad for a pointy-eared elvish princeling. I myself am sitting pretty on 43. He shoots him and he's like, 43. He was already dead. He was twitching. He was twitching. Because he's got my axe embedded in his nervous system. I love it. And he's he grabs him and freaking just starts jerking.
And he makes them twitch. Yeah, he makes them twitch. Yeah.
Just like twitching and just, it's freaking hilarious. It's like, how did they do? I really want to ask. I really do want to ask if I ever meet. I'm never going to meet John Rhys Davies, but John Rhys Davies in the cosmic coincidence that you may see this stream. Did they how did they do it? How did they make the freaking orc move with your axe? Was it a fake orc with a string? What was it? Reveal the movie magic. Because, oh my god, that was so freaking great.
Behind the scenes knowledge, please. Yeah.
Yes. I mean, seriously. What else did we want to cover? I'm drawing a blank. Was there anything else?
Well, we covered some of the lore that I wanted to cover from the so I got and we've talked about the production a good bit. So on my end, I'm good. But I do want to answer Neozog's question real quick. Mm-hmm. The only of those that I would compare in terms of movie adaptation, and I'm talking about them, and I will state this, even though part 2 doesn't come out till March. Damn you, Warner Brothers. Would be Dune. Dune Part 1 is as faithful an adaptation to the original novel, at least in part, that we have gotten. Because I'm sorry, the 80s movie doesn't crack it, and the miniseries is good, but it still doesn't fully crack it doesn't crack the code of how to do a faithful adaptation of Frank Herbert's novel. So that's my
I would agree.
And I love that movie. I got it on 4K when it came out. I absolutely just there was wailing and gnashing of teeth when the announcement came out in late August that they were pushing back Dune Part 2 to March of next year. And I'm like, you sons of bitches.
Yeah, it's French,
forgive me, Lord. Sorry.
Yeah, they even said no strike is going to prevent us from pushing it back. It's like, oh, the fuck you aren't. It's like, fine.
But you know what? Those actors and that crew and Denis Villeneuve busted their ass to make that movie. I'm going to go see it.
Yeah.
My butt's going to be in theater release day when Dune Part 2 comes out.
I mean, I'm not that much of a fan of Denis Villeneuve with some of the shit he's been saying over the years, but I will say that he can make a good movie. He can make a good movie.
I don't care about what he says. I just care about his ability to make good movies.
Yeah. I mean, that's all well and good, but one should not reward
bad behavior.
Yeah. So to speak. But yes, I will also be checking out Dune Part 2 because I actually like the first one too. I mean, I'm not a fan of how I love how this, or did you guys see the 2000 Dune movie and 2000 Children of Dune show?
Yeah.
Yes, I have
like
Children of
how
Dune on
they did
DVD.
this. I like how they did the sandworms with that one.
Yes.
Because that was interesting. It's like, that's cool.
I will say, just a slight deviation for a minute. The worms of Arrakis and Dune, Denis Villeneuve's Dune, pretty damn well spot on. The only one that's even closer, I think, is the worms from the 1980s movie. But that's about the only thing that 1980s movie has going for it is the design of the worms.
Have you ever seen Gods of Egypt?
Yeah,
no,
I have.
I will not ever.
Why?
I will not ever. I've seen clips of it. No.
No, whatever. But anyway, there's a creature
they
called
whitewashed it.
So, and anyway, as I was saying,
the gods of Egypt weren't Caucasian. Sorry,
no
go
shit.
ahead. Sorry.
But anyway, there's Apophis, the embodiment of chaos. If they would have made
Apophis.
A sandworm look like, yeah, if they would have made Apophis look like that, or the sandworms look like Apophis, well, at least mouth-wise, I would have been like, yeah. I could see that. Holy shit. It'd be like that. I can believe right there, man. I absolutely love the 1984 Dune film. Hey, we got Fuck Norris to actually come away from his work.
What up?
How you doing, Fuck Norris? I know you've been
Norris. It's okay to be wrong.
But anyway,
it's okay to be wrong.
Kate, is there anything you wanted to cover?
I think that's all I had was just linking the books and the movies and the major themes and just overall lore.
Well, there is a few more things. Christopher Lee, the legend, the myth, the all of that.
Everything.
It's appropriate to mention this during the appendices because it takes place in the appendices of of the movies. That he met, or I do believe he either talked with or traded letters with, or possibly even met personally J.R.R. Tolkien, and actually got permission to play Gandalf if they ever did an adaptation. However, he instead got the role of Saruman, and he played it so well. Not to mention the how
they thought he didn't have as friendly of a face for a good guy.
Yeah,
is what
and he brought real world knowledge to the movie due to the whole backstabbing thing. It's like, do you know what sound a person makes when they are stabbed in the back? Because I do. And it's like, everybody sit, get your popcorn. We're listening to Daddy Christopher. I mean, it's a joke, obviously, because nobody wants to hear about how a person dies slowly from getting stabbed in the back. But also, Christopher Lee, I do believe, would read the books yearly as well. And so he would be offering like slight little things here and there during the making of the film. And he also gave high praise to What a Workshop for their designs and their dedication to the film. So yeah, folks, What a Workshop. They do some great stuff. It's only they still do. Yes, they do. And Richard Taylor, man, John Howe, Jamie Beswark, Gino Schwartz, Alan Lee, yeah.
You said John Howe, so Alan Lee. Yes.
Yep, John Howe and Alan Lee. You guys are, as well as every person who worked on this film, every single one of you who worked on this film, thank you so much, because you all helped make this film or these films as authentic as they could possibly be. And as I said, I think that Tolkien would appreciate the effort that was put into these films. I do believe that
the perfectionism that was put into each little detail that they put into it.
Yes, and I do believe that he would even be possibly. I'm not speaking for him at all. I'm saying that in my own opinion, I do believe that this man would, or that he possibly would have been amused with some of the stuff that they did, and possibly even say, you know what, this is why I didn't give any real descriptions of things like the Balrog, except that it was both shadow and flame. And instead, or now, I don't think people would agree with the wings, but I think that he would say that looked pretty interesting. I don't think that he would or say one way or another whether it was good, but I think he would probably say it was interesting.
Yes.
And also a very big thanks to J.R.R. Tolkien himself, because as much as you didn't want this to be such a merchandised franchise, you still created something that is pure, that has a lot of passion and heart behind it, because you created something that has transcended your lifetime and will most likely transcend even our lifetime, with hopes of a better future coming ahead of us. But honestly, from the time you sat down and started writing In a Hole in the Ground Lived a Hobbit, you started creating history in such a magical way. So yes, very giant thank you to J.R.R. Tolkien, to Christopher Tolkien, to the family Tolkien, for everything that they have given people. They've given people a mythology and a fantasy that they can really appreciate, and that was really appreciative during a time when there was a lot of evil in the world. World War II,
give
the
us some
many
hope.
wars that went on. You gave us semblances of hope. And thank you to Peter Jackson, Fran Walsh, Philippa Boyens, all the actors and actresses, and the crew and cast of Lord of the Rings. You guys created magic on screen. And it may not be a perfect adaptation, but honestly, I do believe that you did a good job for what you were able to do. And yes, I also do agree that from a previous stream that Robin Williams would have made a very good Tom Bombadil. Because or as much as he is very much a comedic actor, I do not think that I do know for a fact that he knew when comedy was permissible, yet comedy could also be put on the back burner. So I think that he would have made a good Tom Bombadil back then.
Yeah, they would have.
But anyway, folks, I am getting a little bit tired, so I am going to wrap this up. Thank you to everybody in the chat. Fuck Norris, Seth Assassin Trailer, MJ1 Media. MJ1, I am admittedly a bit annoyed that while Gandalf mentioned the Blue Wizards, he couldn't remember their names due to legal crap. It was also because they weren't named.
Yeah.
Yes.
The Blue Wizards were not named. It didn't have anything to do with legal crap. Neozoic, Christian Freights, Happy Dino, Steve Kenobi. Who else? Price is Right reviews. Myself. Ambassadorial. And Kate. She may not have been in the chat, but she was definitely, or she was on the panel. So thank you.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Glad to have been here tonight.
Yep.
Good stream.
As folks, next weekend is most likely going to be a still everybody coming down from their tryptophan highs from the turkey. Sunday next is not going to be a stream. It's holiday weekend. People are most likely going to be spending time with family and whatnot. However, I will still be doing my Tuesday stream. Tomorrow I have a stream with Master Swag. It's going to be on his channel late night because he's Pacific. So yeah, it's going to be like 10 p.m., 7 o'clock Pacific. It's going to be a fun little interview. Tuesday is Jason Bourne. Tuesdays, I'm going to be watching the Bourne Ultimatum tomorrow to get it back in my head, because I also watched Jason Bourne after that because my mom was curious about the movies. She thought they were all right. And I will be getting content out for you guys tomorrow, specifically based on that thing about Saltburn. Make sure that you also subscribe to Ambassador here. He does some good stuff. And if Kate ever decides to get or start creating content, subscribe to her just because she's awesome.
I just jump on other people's stuff. I'm gonna be on 8750 podcast as a guest on December 14th, and I'm always off and on your Yeti F.
Yeah.
Shout out to Yeti F.
Do you want to join in on the Hobbit?
So this next weekend, I don't know if I can make it.
We're not doing next weekend.
Okay. Then the weekend after that, I am free.
All right. We will start that weekend.
Okay.
But yeah, Sunday, I'll probably do an impromptu stream where maybe just go over some stuff that I heard over the week. But
gotcha.
Yeah. Anyway, folks, thank you so much for tuning in. Y'all are freaking awesome and amazing and beautiful people. And always remember, stay humble. And also Namaria.